Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the beginning of the Lesson 17 series. Lesson 17 consists of these final two pages. The last two pages will not be done in one lesson, they won't even be done in two lessons. We're going to be on this lesson basically until we cover all the tajweed rules that these two pages present. These two pages are notorious for having all these rules at the end of the book, but we're going to go through and inshallah we'll go through it properly, slowly, and we'll give every rule its due diligence. So just as a quick little introduction to what we're going to be doing in this Lesson 17 series, we're going to be going over several different tajweed rules. We're going to be going over something called Idghaam. We're going to talk about how to recite the lam in Allah's name, depending on the situation. We're going to talk about something called Noon Qutni. We're going to talk about a concept called qalb, also known as iqlab. And in case maybe my explanation doesn't do the rule justice, for this entire 17 series, I'm actually going to add a link to other YouTube videos that describe these rules in good, concise detail. These videos are fantastic. If you feel like my explanation probably doesn't do it justice, please look down in the description below. Watch those videos. I highly recommend them. They're fantastic to watch. Even if you do understand my explanation, you should still go through and get an even better understanding by watching those videos. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to zoom in into the first page. Before we get started with this page, I actually would like to go over the first of the four new tajweed rules that we're going to cover in this lesson. I'm going to isolate some of these. I'm going to pull them out and we're going to talk about these separately. I'm going to talk about this one, this one, this one, this one, and only the beginning half of this one. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those out separately. Let's see. Okay, so here we go. I managed to isolate them into, their own little screen here. The reason why I want to do that is because we're going to take an in-depth look at some of these squares, okay? So what I want to draw your attention to is you see these letters at the top here. Okay, you see all these letters. They seem to be there just randomly, right? They have a purpose. So I want to focus on this little junction right here, okay? So if we look at that, we have a combination of ra and ya. The first ra, right, this ra right here, it has two fathas. So if you think about it, right, a ra with two fathas is basically equal to a ra, the one fatha and a nun sakin. Okay, so if you do ra connected to a nun sakin, it makes a run sound. Okay, so what I'm going to do is instead of putting ra and the two fathas, I'm going to rewrite these two down here. Okay, so here's my ra, here's my sukun, and where this ya comes from, it comes from this ya right here. Okay, all I did, I just took this ya and I drew it up there. This ya now has a shadda on it. Remember, I think it was a lesson or two ago where I actually taught you that if you have a sukun that comes first and the shadda comes afterward, you are going to drop the letter with the sukun on it. So in this case, the noon has the sukun, so I'm going to completely drop it. I'm just going to use this ra to jump straight to ya. Okay, and the way that sounds is rai. Okay, ya is a very special case. You're going to do this gunna on this ya, right? And you're going to hold it down. And that's actually the rule that I'm teaching here. And that rule is idgham. So the rule is as follows. If you have any kind of tanween, right? Whether it's two fathas or two kasras or two dhammas, and afterward you have a ya with a shadda on it, you're going to hold down that ya sound. You're going to drop the noon sound from that tanween, you're going to jump straight to the ya and you're going to hold it. We're going to call this idgham. So just really quickly one more time, the reason why I have this ra here is so ra, the fathatain, is basically equivalent to ra with a fatha plus a noon with a sukun. All I did was I just rewrote this bit down here, basically put all the signs back except for the plus sign, we don't need that, and then the shadda. And remember, when the sukun comes first, we're going to drop it, and this ra will jump straight to ya, and it will make a e sound. You're going to feel it from your nose, and you want to hold it down for one alif. Basically about as long as you would hold an ikhfa or a ghunna. Okay, great. Let's go on to the next example here. So here we are. This is the next one that I pulled out. Same basic concept. Here, let's take a look at this junction again. This time we have the exact same thing going on. So now we have this ra with a fathatain. I'm going to break that ra fathatain just into ra and a sukun. Now this right here, all this, I'm just going to copy right there, right? So again, that's ra with my fatha, my noon, and then the reason that ya is there is because I'm just pulling this ya and I'm putting it up there. So here's the shadda. And again, if you have a sukun that comes before the shadda, I'm going to ignore it. This ra will jump straight to the ya. Once again, it makes that rai sound. Okay, there's another example of the idgham. I'm actually going to read the box this time. So if you look at it, it says شَرًّا يَرَهُ. Okay, waqaf شَرًّا يَرَهُ. Okay, remember I put this imaginary sukun there, so then I don't need to read that little wow. Cool, let's move on to the next example. So in this example, there is not a tanween. In fact, instead, all we have is the meme followed by a noon sakin and then a ya with a shadda. There is no tanween, and this actually leads to the next point. You would do the idgham holding sound when there's a tanween, and you would do the idgham holding sound if you have this noon sakin in between. Okay, so if you have a letter, if you have this letter, and then you have this noon sakin in the middle, followed by a ya with shadda, you're going to do idgham again in this situation. Only this time we don't have a tanween, so we don't have to draw all the steps. All we know is we're going to skip that noon. This meme will jump straight to ya. Okay, so now if we read it, in fact, I'm just going to put a little X there just so that I know. Fa man ya'mal. Okay, fa man ya'mal. Again, I held that ya. Here we go. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so here we go. This time I want to look at this junction. Okay, the ba with the ya there. Here it is. So this ba has two dhammas on it. It's a little hard to draw. Two dhammas is basically ba with one dhamma, right? Plus a noon sakin. Okay, so now if I just copy this little bit there, here's my dhamma, here's my sukun, and again the ya comes from here. I just draw it up there. Okay, again the sukun is there. I'm going to drop it, jump straight to the ya. It makes the sound boing. Notice the sound difference because now there is a dhamma on the ba. I'm not going to say bang. Okay, I do have to pronounce that dhamma on the ba. Boing. Now before I read this box, there is one more little rule I want to talk about. We did talk about this junction right here, but there is idgham that shows up one more time in this box. I will be right back with this example. So we're going to go to the next one, and then I'm going to come back to this one. So in this example, I'm going to look at this junction. And you notice this time that there is tanween, but there is no ya with a shadda. Instead, this time we have a wow with a shadda. And that leads to the next rule, that if you have a wow with a shadda that comes after a tanween or a noon sakin, you would do that idgham sound on the wow as well. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. Here's my jim, right? The two fathas, my fathatain. If you break down jim, fathatain, it's basically jim with a fatha and then a noon sakin. Again, all I'm doing is I'm just copying it down here, the same bit. Only now I have wow. So now I'm going to put wow over there. I'm going to skip the noon sakin. I'm going to jump straight to wow. It becomes jaw. See, again, I held it there that time as well. So let's go ahead and read the box. If I clear this up, you got si, ra, jawha, jan. And then you can barely see this walk off here. So if we read it again, remember that rule that if there's a walk off after a fathatain, right? If there's fathatain at the end, we're going to eliminate that fathatain and we're just going to read this alif. Okay, so here we go. Sirajan wahaja. So now you know that there are two letters that you do the ghunna idgham sound with, and it's ya and wow. Now that we know wow is also involved, I'm going to go back to the previous example. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so here we are again. Last time we looked at this little bit right here. This time, I want you to see if you can find the other idgham, and it is actually right here. Okay, because there's another tanween and it connects to wow. Remember, wow is also an idgham letter. You should be able to just look at it and recognize that this box right here, okay, is pronounced the. Now let's read the whole square. قلوب يومئذ واجفة. Okay, now waqaf, this ta is going to become a ha sound, so قلوب يومئذ واجفة. So in this case we had two idghams in one example. And now I'm going to do one more example, and you may recognize it from a previous lesson. I told you at that time not to worry about it. I'm going to do another video just to talk about that specific rule we learned in this box right here. So here we are back again, and as you probably already know, I'm going to look at this. So just like what we've been doing before, let's go ahead and break it down. So here's my ya with my two dhammas. The two dhammas can be broken down with to ya with one dhamma and a ya with the sukun. I'm sorry, noon with the sukun. So just gonna copy this down here. Here's my ya with dhamma, noon sukun, wa with shadda, right? This wa with shadda is there. And just as we've been doing this entire time, you're gonna drop that. This ya will jump straight to the wow. So you would pronounce it as yunwa. Let's go ahead and do it now. So ja miyunwa arabiyun. So now the question becomes, if you look at this junction, there's ya with the shadda again. How come we don't do idgham there? And the answer is very simple. Remember, we only do idgham, yes, on ya and wa when there's a shadda, but we only do it if it's after a tanween or if it's after a noon sakin. It has to meet those requirements, either after a tanween or that noon sakin that we will ultimately skip, right? That noon sakin. So only under those two conditions, if afterwards comes ya or wow, we do idgham. What if another letter with a shadda shows up after the tanween or a noon sakin? Basically the same thing. You're going to drop the noon sound. You're going to jump straight to the letter, only you will not hold it. It's still called idgham, but you're not going to hold it down as long as you would a wow or a ya. Now what if a noon or a meme with a shadda appears after a noon sakin or a tanween? Remember we talked about noon and meme with shadda, those have gunna. We talked about that in the past. If a noon shadda or meme shadda shows up after a tanween or a noon sakin, you would still do the gunna sound. Okay, so basically the whole bottom line of this is you're only going to hold down meme and noon with gunna, and then ya and wow with idgham. So in the next lesson, I'm going to introduce another tajweed rule. This one is about the lam, how lam is pronounced in Allah's name. If Allah's name shows up in the Qur'an, it's pronounced different ways, depending on if there's a fatha, kasra, or dhamma. I'll explain that in greater detail in the next video. And just to recap this lesson, we talked about idgham. You would perform idgham, you would hold it down if there's a ya or a wow and there's a shadda on it. Only if there's a noon sakin behind it, or if there is a letter with a tanween behind it. If my explanation did not help, if you found that my explanation, maybe I was confusing, I was too fast, rewatch the video, and even after that, if you feel like it wasn't, suffice, I actually attached a link in the description below. You can click on that. I do a phenomenal job talking about idgham. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up for the time being. Please keep me in your du'as, and I will see you guys in the next video, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.